Don't let go of my hand. I'm tired of holding you, the voice behind her whispered. Please, the mud is deep here. I can't stand. You should have thought of that before you became father's favorite. The girl twisted, panic flashing across her face. The rain had turned the riverbank into a slippery black slope, and the current below churned like a pot of boiling oil. Sister, please, she begged. I didn't ask for this. But the hand gripping hers loosened. Another shove. Her foot slid. The river swallowed her scream. Hello, dear listener. Before we step deeper into this tale, help us grow this circle of stories by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support keeps these old fires burning. Now, listen closely. In the wide grasslands where the red earth cracked under the sun stood the village of Kejoni. It was a place where goats wandered freely, children chased dragonflies, and drums spoke louder than words during moonlit dances. Among its people lived a farmer named Boko, a man respected for his wealth of cattle and stubborn pride. His wife, Lela, was gentle, known for her quiet laughter and strong hands. They had 4 daughters. To the village, daughters were blessings. To Boko, they were disappointments. Each season, he prayed for a son who would inherit his land, his cattle, and his name. Each season, the spirits gave him another girl. His daughters, Nima, Sod, Eo, and the youngest, Zoe, grew beneath the weight of his silence. He fed them, clothed them, but his eyes always looked past them, searching for the son who never came. Only Lela's love kept their home from turning to stone. One evening, as the sky burned gold and violet, Lela walked alone to the sacred termite mound beyond the millet fields. The villagers believed the mound was older than the village itself, a doorway through which the unseen world sometimes listened. She knelt, pressing her forehead to the warm earth. Spirits who hear what mouths cannot say, she whispered, my husband's heart is drying like a forgotten well. Give us a child who will soften him before bitterness consumes this house. The wind shifted. The grasses bent though no storm was coming. A voice rose from the mound, not loud, but deep enough to settle in her bones. You will not receive a son, it said. But you will bear a child whose gift will draw the world to your door. Guard that gift with fairness, or it will turn against you. Lela trembled but thanked the unseen voice and hurried home. Months later, under a sky heavy with thunder, she gave birth. The child was a girl. Boko sighed before even looking at her. But when the midwife lifted the newborn toward the firelight, everyone in the hut gasped. The baby's shadow on the wall moved on its own. While the infant slept peacefully in her mother's arms, her shadow danced behind her, stretching, swirling, and softly humming a melody like distant flutes. They named her Zoe, meaning beautiful. As she grew, the miracle deepened. When Zoe laughed, her shadow spun joyful patterns across the walls. When she cried, it called into itself like a wounded bird. When she sang, the shadow sang back, a second voice, haunting and sweet. Visitors began traveling from neighboring villages just to witness the girl whose shadow carried music. Boko's heart changed overnight. He lifted her onto his shoulders in the market. He boasted of her gift to strangers. He forbade her from fetching water or grinding grain. Her hands are meant for greater things, he would say proudly. But every praise he gave Zoe was a thorn in the hearts of her sisters. While she sat in the shade, they labored beneath the sun. While she received sweet fruit, they chewed dry cassava. While she slept, their resentment sharpened. And resentment, when fed long enough, grows teeth. One afternoon, while their parents traveled to a distant funeral, Nima approached Zoe with a smile so warm it almost felt real. Sister, she said softly, we have found a place beyond the old river bend where the night flowers bloom even during the day. Will you come see them with us? Zoe's eyes lit up. All she had ever wanted was to belong with them. So she followed. They walked farther than she had ever gone before, past the last grazing fields, past the baobab marked with ancestral symbols, until the ground sloped down toward the swollen river. Rain had fallen upriver the night before. The banks were slick. The current was wild. Zoe hesitated. Sisters, this place feels dangerous. Nima smiled thinned. That's because it is. A push. A slip. A scream. And the river opened its arms. The river swallowed Zoe whole. Cold water slammed into her chest, forcing the breath from her lungs. Muddy foam rushed over her face as the current dragged her under, spinning her like a broken leaf in a storm. She tried to scream, but the river filled her mouth. Above her, the sky vanished into a blur of grey water and churning light. Then, something strange happened. The sound came first. Not the roar of the river. Not her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. A song. Soft. Familiar. It rose beside her like a whisper carried through deep water. Zoe's eyes fluttered open. Through the murk, she saw it. Her shadow. It did not cling to the riverbed like a normal shadow should. Instead, it moved beside her, glowing faintly, stretching through the water like a dark ribbon touched with silver light. And it was singing. The melody called through the current, gentle but strong, wrapping around her body like unseen hands. The pull of the river weakened. The frantic spinning slowed. Zoe felt herself rising. Not swimming. Lifted. The water pushed her toward the surface as if something beneath her refused to let her sink. She burst upward with a ragged gasp, coughing river water into the air. The current still rushed past, but now it carried her sideways instead of down. The unseen force guided her toward the bank where tangled roots clawed into the soil like fingers. Her hands struck one. She grabbed it desperately. Mud slid beneath her knees, but she clawed her way up, gasping, trembling, until she collapsed on the shore, soaked and shaking. For a long moment, she could only lie there, listening to the river thunder past as though nothing unusual had happened. But when she turned her head, she saw her shadow on the wet ground beside her. It was still moving. Still singing. Only now the melody sounded deeper, older, almost sorrowful. Zoe pushed herself upright, staring at it. "Did you save me?" she whispered. The shadow flickered. The song softened. And then, slowly, it settled back into stillness, clinging to her feet like any ordinary shadow. Except Zoe knew now that it wasn't. She rose unsteadily. The riverbank was far from the village. The sky had begun to darken, clouds rolling low with the promise of another storm. She started walking. Each step felt unreal, like she had left part of herself in the water behind her. By the time she reached the first millet fields, night had begun to settle. Smoke from cooking fires curled into the sky. Voices drifted through the air. The village was alive and unaware that it had nearly lost one of its children. When Zoe stepped into the clearing, a woman fetching water dropped her calabash. "Zoe!" The shout tore through the evening. Within moments, people gathered, first curious, then shocked. She was soaked, bruised, covered in river mud. But alive. Lela came running, her breath breaking into sobs the moment she saw her daughter. "Zoe! Spirits protect us, where were you? What happened?" Zoe tried to answer, but her voice shook. "The river," she managed. Behind her mother, Boko appeared. For a heartbeat, he simply stared, his face unreadable. Then he strode forward and seized her shoulders. "You fell," he demanded. "How?" Zoe's gaze drifted past him. Her sister stood at the edge of the crowd. Nima's face was pale. Soda's lips trembled. Eo stared at the ground. The memory of the shove burned in Zoe's chest. She opened her mouth, closed it again. "I slipped," she whispered. Lela pulled her close, relief flooding her voice. "The spirits returned you to us," she murmured. But Boko's eyes narrowed. His gaze moved from Zoe, to her sisters, then back again. He said nothing. Yet something heavy settled into the space between them. That night, as Zoe lay on her mat, sleep would not come. The moonlight slipped through the cracks in the wall, painting her shadow across the floor. It moved. Slowly. Deliberately. The shadow turned toward her. And in the quiet of the hut, it sang again. But this time, the melody did not sound gentle. It sounded like a warning. Morning came slowly to Kejoni. The sky was pale, the air heavy with the smell of wet soil, and the village stirred with quiet unease. Word of Zoe's return had spread through the night like smoke. By sunrise, every compound knew the river had taken her, and given her back. Some called it a blessing. Others whispered it was a sign. Inside Boko's hut, silence ruled. Zoe sat beside her mother, wrapped in dry cloth, eating little. Her body still ached, but it was her thoughts that weighed heavier. Across the room, her sisters moved carefully, avoiding her eyes. They had not spoken a single word to her since she returned. Not apology. Not explanation. Not even anger. Only fear. Boko watched them all. He spoke little, but his gaze lingered longer than usual, as though trying to read what lay beneath their faces. By midday, the elders called for a gathering. When something touched the spirits, the village listened. Under the great baobab, mats were laid in a circle. Elders with ash-gray beards, women wrapped in indigo cloth, and curious children filled the clearing. Zoe sat between her parents. Her sisters stood behind them. The oldest elder lifted his staff. "We hear the river returned a child," he said slowly. "Such things do not happen without reason." Murmurs passed through the crowd. "Child," he continued, turning to Zoe, "tell us what the river showed you." Zoe swallowed. The memory of hands pushing her, the cold rush of water, the shadow's song, her voice came soft. "I fell." Her sisters exhaled quietly. But the elder's eyes did not soften. "The river does not keep secrets," he replied. "If truth is hidden, it will rise." The wind shifted. A strange stillness settled. And then it happened. Zoe's shadow moved. At first, only she noticed. It stretched longer than the sun's anger allowed, sliding across the dust like spilled ink. A ripple passed through it, as though something breathed beneath its surface. The villagers leaned closer. The shadow lifted. And it began to sing. The sound roared across the clearing, not loud, but impossibly clear, like a flute carved from bone and memory. Gasps broke from the crowd. The melody changed. It was no longer the sweet tune people had heard before. Now it carried rhythm. Motion. A story. The shadow bent, twisted, and reshaped itself against the ground, forming shapes in dark light. For girls walking. A swollen river. A hesitation. A shove. The clearing erupted in stunned whispers. Boko stood frozen. Lela covered her mouth. The shadow's song rose, replaying the moment in silence and sound, the push, the fall, the current swallowing Zoe whole. When the song ended, the shadow snapped back into stillness. The world felt too quiet. All eyes turned. Not to Zoe. To the three sisters. Nima trembled first. "It was not meant to kill her," she whispered, voice cracking. "We only wanted father to see us." Sod began to cry. "We were tired of being nothing." Eo sank to her knees, shaking. The crowd murmured, some with pity, others with anger. Boko did not move. For a long time, he said nothing. Then his voice came low and hollow. "You nearly fed your sister to the river, for my approval." No one answered. Because the truth already sat in the dust between them. The elder lifted his staff again. "Jealousy is a seed," he said. "When watered, it grows thorns that wound the hand that planted it." He turned to Boko. "And favoritism is the rain that feeds it." The words struck deeper than any shout. Boko's shoulders sagged, as if something heavy had finally broken inside him. That night, the household did not eat together. The sisters sat apart, quiet and shaken. Zari lay awake again, watching moonlight crawl across the wall. Her shadow stretched beside her. It did not sing this time. It simply rested. But she could feel it now, not just as a miracle, but as something older, something bound to justice as much as to beauty. Outside, thunder roared faintly in the distance. Change was coming. And this time, it would not come from the river. The storm arrived 3 nights later. Not a violent storm, but a steady one, the kind that soaked the earth slowly, forcing seeds to wake and roots to listen. In Boko's compound, no one slept easily. Since the gathering beneath the baobab, something had shifted. The villagers still greeted the family, but their smiles carried weight now, as though everyone waited to see what kind of house Boko truly kept. Inside, the silence had changed too. It was no longer the quiet of resentment. It was the quiet of reckoning. That evening, as rain tapped softly against the thatch, Boko called his daughters to sit before him. All 4. They arranged themselves in a line on the woven mats, Nima, Sword, Eo, and Zari, just as they had done when they were small and waiting for stories. But tonight, Boko was the one learning how to speak. For a long time, he stared at the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded older. I thought a son would carry my name, he said. I thought strength lived in men and legacy in boys. He shook his head slowly. But I nearly lost my child because I could not see the worth already sitting in my own house. The fire cracked softly. Rain whispered outside. He turned to his eldest daughters. I gave one of you sunlight, he said, voice thick, and left the rest to grow in shadow. Nima's shoulders shook. Sword covered her face. Eo stared at the floor, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Boko looked last at Zari. And you, he said, I treated like a treasure instead of a daughter. I forgot that love should hold all children the same, or it becomes a blade. Zari's throat tightened. She had never heard her father speak this way before. The silence that followed felt heavy, but not cruel. Just honest. Boko exhaled slowly. From today, he said, this house changes. Each of you will learn, walk, and be honored equally. No child of mine will live unseen again. The words settled like seeds into wet soil. Outside, the rain deepened, as if the sky itself approved. The change did not happen in a single sunrise. Folktales tell truths, but life grows them slowly. Boko began rising before dawn to walk beside his daughters in the fields. He laughed when they teased him for his stiff back. He listened when they spoke. He praised effort, not just miracles. Lela's laughter returned to the compound, soft at first, then full again. The sisters changed too. Not perfectly. Not overnight. But they began sitting beside Zari instead of apart from her. They shared tasks. Shared meals. Shared stories. Resentment, once fed, had grown sharp. But once starved, it slowly softened. Zari's shadow remained with her, singing at times, quiet at others. But its song no longer felt like a spectacle for strangers. It felt like a reminder that gifts were never meant to divide a house, only to illuminate it. Years later, travelers still came to Kejoni. They asked for the girl whose shadow sang. They expected a miracle. Instead, they found something better. They found 4 women walking side by side in the fields, laughing beneath the same sun. They found a father who spoke proudly of all his daughters. And they found a house where no child lived unseen. When night fell, and drums called the village to dance, Zari's shadow would sometimes rise behind her and hum softly into the dark. Not a warning. Not a lament, but a gentle song carried by the wind across the grasslands. A song that said, favoritism breaks a home. Jealousy darkens the heart. But fairness, fairness lets love grow roots strong enough to survive any storm. And in Kijoni, that lesson lived longer than any miracle.